I think that was the first painting I modeled for, was the hepatitis.
Mm-hmm.
And he used me for the body and also, on the face, and then mixed it. Speaking of mixing things.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that face when you look at it, how you have this two different eyes there, and the one side of the mouth goes up in a smile and the other down in an extreme tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Then you have this duality integrated in one face.
Yes, that's so weird that you can have these opposites and it's not running apart.
Yeah,
it's not going in each direction. It's one unified image or face.
That's the attempt of integration of both opposites, and that duality that becomes undivided but individual.
Yeah,
like in undivided duality.
That's the thing with individual, because I thought it meant that you cannot divide.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the?
Yeah, but it says dual, individual.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells you that there's a duality there that is not possible to divide. And then I think that's kind of this dialogue between, you could say, the tragic face, this sad side of the face, and this laughing part. The integration of both opposites, like making a little bit androgynous figures, the integration of both female and male, and the integration of light and shadow. So I think it's understanding that there will always be opposites, but making them integrated. So they becomes a sort of a unity there.
I've always been joking about how that's on a purely technical level. Yeah, that it's easier to make a masterpiece. You just unite complete opposites. You have a strict form and a foggy line. It has to be strict and dissolved.
Yes.
And the round things have to be more square, and the square things have to be more round, and you just go down the list.
Yeah.
So if you can just mix the opposites, then you're there.
Yeah, and to join in that kind of dynamic of work in which you're struggling and pushing to make the opposites become a sort of unity and undivided. It requires a lot of work to blend these two opposites.
But that's like a duality of the form itself, the actual paint.
Yeah, but then when you are trying to make a unity between these two expressions, you're working also, of course, over the surface, but you're dealing with a concept of making true emotions appear one and indivisible. And I think that's something quite very important element that you can see in the best paintings and best sculptures, that they have this vulnerable expression and also this strong vitality of the body, like the image of that Greek Hellenistic boxer who has been defeated, but you can see that it's vital, but you can see how vulnerable the man is. I mean, and you see how grandiosity is in his vulnerable position. Maybe he has been defeated, but that kind of direction, that kind of way of blending things, I think makes a very harmonic balance between opposites. Like if you talk about in technical aspects in painting, the loose effect together with these tight edges, like extremely well control over the anatomy and the proportions and everything, but letting some places of the figure or the face breathe out. So you balance the whole thing. If you make it all defined, it loses its illusion of life, vitality of it.
Well, it loses literally its connection with the things that are around it, because you separate things with a clear line.
then is when it becomes a painting that categorizes things into defined places, defined positions, very stiff. This is this is that. This is a happy man, this is a sad man. And then you kill it.
And that's the problem with the speaking of Greek sculptures. You see, they always try to attach Hitler to it, of course. If you look at those sculptures that were favored by him, especially this Arno Breker, then it's only male, but it is in a completely exaggerated way, and the figures cannot move. You know, they're like,
they lose the dynamic. It's you could say it's pure Apollonian way of representation. Stiff figure, proportion, laws, but then when you take out maybe the Dionysian element, which is the other part, the wholeness, the power of life, you could say, the force, the poetry, then it loses its capacity of affecting the viewer, and when it loses that dynamic, of course, it becomes dead, dull. So
well, this is what I talked with Christine Onsrud about it. Why do you do it? That you understand, you're not just copying, but you understand why. What's the purpose of doing it? And I mean, it's like, okay, so we mentioned this Dionysian-Apollonian distinction, the birth of tragedy by Nietzsche. He explains it so well. I can really only recommend everyone to read that book, because it resonates so much with a lot of the things we've been talking about. Where it says that a culture that is not, I'm paraphrasing obviously, is not sort of under the umbrella of myths or see things through myth, that culture will not be able to create anything, and it doesn't give the citizens or the people a sense of purpose in life, why you are doing it.
A sense of wholeness, which he was. I mean, I think he declared himself, Nietzsche, as the last disciple of Dionysus, of the great philosopher Dionysus. And he saw that that's what I understand, that his claim of the death of God is what that element is not present anymore on this Western civilization, and what comes out from that is total disaster.
You know, it's
it loses its cohesion. Okay.
No, fine. Continue if you.
No, but I was just going back to what you said, that it loses that sense of wholeness.
I talked to a South African painter, Rins van Niekerk, and we were going to have him on, but of course it's difficult to travel these days. And we were talking about it because we were going to have a conversation on myth. He's very into that, and then we were talking about this death of God thing, which is not, as it is portrayed, that Nietzsche is sort of bragging about, God's dead, out, now it's us. It's like the opposite of what Nietzsche is actually saying.
Totally.
And we were talking about it, and then Randis was saying that, well, the God is the symbol of yourself. So if you kill God, you kill yourself.
Yes.
Then it's not a matter of being cocky about it anymore.
No, if you cut yourself from that element, you are just operating with one side, which is maybe the analytical, logical,
bureaucratic mind.
Kind of very materialistic focus on and then you see how the whole movement of Western culture has gone more and more into materialistic view, but then suddenly nowadays you start seeing a sort of a need for something else, and that can come out in very strange ways. But I mean, it's I really understood quite a lot, going into the birth of tragedy. It's one of the things that was so strange. You start
making these strange connections where you think it's like, I'm not just making things up now. But this purely Dionysian, which is only about rationality, measurement, and these things, and that reminds me so much of what Christine also was saying about studying at the academy, Florence Academy, learning a lot, but it's also quite rigorous in a sort of a wrong way.
Yeah.
And everything shall be correct on the millimeter. And then suddenly I thought, well, it's the Florence Academy of Art. They are teaching only to copy nature and not to put it into this eternal perspective. So you can have a situation where you want to do the opposite of modern art and you do the same thing but just within craft.
Yes, it's the same mentality, but just in different...
It's based on a time. Maybe you paint people in 1880s dresses instead, but it's still in that time, in a time, right? And now then I start to think, well, that's the same mindset as in Mondrian then. Clear lines, and the squares must be like this. Was with his friend who tried to tilt them, and he didn't like that. Yes, that was wrong, because it has to be true. You know, that's the thou shalt monster that Campbell is talking about.
Which one is that? If you can.
Thou shalt. That's the monster. That's the dragon. That what to say? The monster that shall cling to what is past, not because it's past like an arty thing, you know, or old, but because it clings to. That's the problem. And you want to have this, you know, set, but of course it has to be living. It has to continue, not die, not stand still.
No, then you kill it completely.
So you have, you know, you can have someone who's very academic in painting, and you have Mondrian, and they're basically thinking the same thing. But then on the other hand, you have, for example, someone who's like Jackson Pollock, who's called only the Dionysian, seemingly, but it's all look at me painting, you know, my vitality being thrust into the world, right?
Yes.
But it's still not in the heliocentric perspective.
I think that's that heliocentric way of dealing with a painting or a story, to connect the dialogue between, for example, these two, you could say Apollonian and Dionysian, and that dialogue, that golden middle point in which it has elements of life and observation of nature that everyone can relate to and appreciate, well-studied proportion and logic understanding of a story, but also the poetry and the illusion of life and the psychological depiction of the characters involved into this scene is taking in. And I think that is the kind of the balance of this, that in that individual point where the duality is not divided anymore but integrated.
I'm thinking about this thing when it comes to how we talked about it before, but in this light, making something that has somehow contemporary props. But you can infuse it with some sense of eternity. Like Andrew Wyeth would be an example of that.
Yes, he does that.
Not that this is contemporary, but he does use contemporary means. But not as a point in itself.
No.
Or you could say it about Ibsen, because it is obviously a bourgeois home, you know, in the doll's house. It's not, they're not living in a cave, or, you know, he's not out hunting and coming back with animals or whatever, you know. So that could be anywhere, at any time. So I guess that's a lucky balance then between these two. You have to have that in any case, but it can perhaps be even stronger if you have as little the actual action going on is as little contemporary as possible.
I think so. I think that the human face and the representations of human emotions and the eternal dramas
Because you see it very clearly in people who are inspired by Wyeth. That they have, because he can be sort of very meticulous, seemingly very sort of anal about all those chains on that, the individual chains on that chain.
Yeah.
But when you see other people do that, they sort of get caught in that and they lose that sort of softness. That,
Yeah. Then you get stuck on the manner, on the way of Wyeth is doing, and that happens, I think, a lot.
Yeah.
It's how you can connect a technical way of doing things with storytelling, for example, or with this more whole understanding of life or archetypes.
And you could say the same thing about people who are influenced by odd Nerdrum. Painting a stick there or a hood or whatever, but without understanding why that is necessary, so it becomes more like a ornamental prop rather than a necessity.
Yes.
And then it just becomes, I guess, Apollonian, and it's just sort of depicting and placing these things according to a sort of an abstract pattern without having that story. Because I think the storytelling could be labeled or go under the Dionysian label. Right?
Yeah. That can happen. Of course, it will lead to make maybe a very good painting that looks with technical qualities that you will admire and you will say, yes, it's wonderful. But when you are looking for this more whole, dramatic, heliocentric understanding of life, then the individual or the painter has to be responsible to understand why he's doing this, which story are you telling, and there must be something there. So then I think the shapes or the forms that are depicted there on the painting, they appear natural.
Thank you for checking out this clip from the Cave of Apelles. If you want to watch the entire segment, head over to caveofapelles.com/donate and become a $5 patron. That will allow you to access all our Dark Flame episodes, bonus material with our featured guests, and more.